Hello and welcome to Crystal Clear Solutions. I am Crystal, the organization queen, and today we get to have a very exciting chat with Drew from Impala Accountants, all about the systems that you can implement into your business and almost into your personal life as well, so that when you get to the end of the financial year, you're not spending days and days collecting all your data and making sure everything's good to go, or alternatively not doing any work and handing your accountant a bunch of crap. So welcome, Drew. I'm really excited to have you join us.
Hi everyone. Hi Crystal, thanks for having me today.
That's all right. Do you want to give us a bit of an intro around your background and what you're all about?
Yeah, sure. So I founded Impala Accountants 4 years ago after working for other people for a very long time. I started my career back in 2003 after doing an accounting and information tech double degree. I spent 5 years at a smaller firm, or 5.5 years. Worked overseas for a couple of years. Came back to Australia, worked for a much larger firm. And in that firm, I worked mostly in the international tax team. So that was a really exciting role for me. And in the end, I was sort of managing that team, and that worked really well. And that sort of gave me the confidence to go out and try something on my own. And yeah, it's been 4 years now. And yeah, things have been really good. We sort of specialize in small business. Yeah, so we help people with accounting support, tax support. I do like sort of international tax still. That's a bit of a passion of mine. Okay. We have a mix of clients.
Challenges you a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. It's a little bit different from the day-to-day work we do, so that's always really exciting for me.
And would that be small businesses that are, like, let's say they've got an Australian business, but they do have clients overseas, so they're having to deal with the international taxes? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, a little bit of that. In my previous job, I dealt more with big multinationals coming into Australia and setting up Australian entities, and the transfer pricing and some of those more technical things. In my firm at the moment is more entrepreneurial, newer businesses, smaller business that are looking to maybe move offshore or set up sort of branches offshore and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really exciting. A lot of young people now there's so many businesses that are location independent. So people are looking at living in, maybe a lower tax jurisdiction or, a country where the cost of living is lower. So I just sort of help guide them in ways to get out of the Australian tax net in, a legal way where it's nice and clear that they're going to be fine. So I generally give some advice around that area.
Great. All right, well, let's jump into it. I think the first thing that we're going to discuss is implementing really good bookkeeping and record keeping.
Yeah, that's right. And if you've got good record keeping and bookkeeping, it makes everything easier. Like, firstly, for yourself, it will give you a better understanding of where your business is. So at any particular point in time, if you keep your bookkeeping up to date and accurate, you can assess the performance of your business, what your likely tax liabilities are going to be, and it allows you to sort of make real-time decisions. So if you need to make changes in your business, whether you're spending too much or you need to spend more on marketing, for instance, to boost your sales, then having up-to-date records is going to be vital for that. If you're not doing your books maybe on a weekly or at a minimum on a monthly sort of cycle, then you're sort of flying a little bit blind. So keeping your records up to date, super important. For your bookkeeper or your accountant, it's going to be a massive help as well. Because at any point in time, you could contact your accountant and say, can you please have a look at what's going on? How am I performing for the year? And if they're up to date, we can give you some good advice around that. If there's a bunch of outstanding transactions or things that we don't know what's going on, then it's very difficult to give sort of sound advice. And likewise for yourself, if you're trying to make some sort of decision on your business and your figures aren't accurate, then you may be making the wrong decision. So that's super important. So,
and what does good look like? So, I know what I think good looks like, but when you put your bookkeepings or your record keepings over to an accountant who essentially is an expert in that area, what good looks like is probably very different to you.
Yeah, to an extent. I would say number one would be make sure that your bank reconciles. So if your bank account reconciles, that gives us some comfort that every transaction that's gone through is being captured somewhere, whether it's in the right place or not, it's been captured. So that would be the number one place to start. If that's right, then we can sort of jump in there and figure out where things should be and move them if we need to.
Yep.
If you're missing bank transactions and things like that, then we don't have the complete, or we don't have all the pieces. So we can't even put them all together. There may be some gaps. So that's really important. One thing that I think is pretty important with bookkeeping or looking at your own records is have it in a format that you understand, and reach out to a bookkeeper or your accountant to help you understand the certain reports that you want to look at, which may be things like your cash flow reports, profit and loss, and balance sheet, because they all give you something different about the business. And just for an example, the layout of the profit and loss, you can have it in so many different ways, but set it up in a way, like set your accounts up in a way that makes sense to you. So that may be separating your trading income from other sorts of income. So you may be receiving some government grants from JobKeeper or Cash Flow Boost, or even local government grants. You want to separate those lines of income. So,
yeah, and so best to be kind of as detailed as possible so that when you're looking at those reports, you can clearly see where that income has come from or what it's to do with, rather than just one lump sum of income.
Yeah, that's right. And again, go as detailed as you need to be. That's up to you what you're going to do with that information. But I would certainly say keep your trading income separate, and then in your trading income, if you're offering different types of services, you may want to break that up further again.
Yep.
So if you're selling a product plus delivering a service, you may want to separate that, so then you can clearly see where your income's coming from. And same with your expenses. You may want to group your expenses into like fixed expenses, which may be like your monthly internet bill, your monthly rent, things that aren't going to change very much from month to month. And then group your variable expenses, which may change month to month as your income goes up and down. But just organize it in a way that makes sense to you and allows you as a business owner to make good decisions. Yep. And get a good picture of where your business is at. And there's some really good tools that help with that. There's some add-ons to some of the good bookkeeping platforms like Xero and QuickBooks and so forth. So there's some, things like Receipt Bank, HubDoc, and even Xero itself will let you take photos of like invoices and things like that you can upload in. So all those sorts of things, if you can keep all your records in one place, that will help your accountant or your bookkeeper sort of sift through your records and have a better understanding of what's going on. Okay. And streamline that process.
So let's talk about the digital tools then that will, you can implement in a small business to help that end of financial year process to be quicker, easier, simpler. What are the ones that you recommend?
Just for the main bookkeeping platform, I would recommend probably Xero. Most people would have heard of that by now. If you're not on an online cloud-based accounting package, you're doing yourself a disservice and everyone else that you work with. They're very easy to keep up to date.
I see a lot people asking about, when should I change from doing my bookwork on a spreadsheet into a proper cloud-based platform like Xero? Is there any kind of definitive time in your business or money in your business that you can gauge and then go, okay, now's the time?
Not a clear line, but I would say it comes down to how much time you're spending in like preparing those spreadsheets every month, and put a value on your own time to sort of work that out. So something like Xero will cost you $50 or $60 a month. QuickBooks is probably half that price. MyOb's a very similar price. So I would say like a cloud-based accounting platform that's linked to your bank accounts and has direct data feeds and stuff in there. For a business that's maybe having 200 transactions a month, maybe, which is quite small, so just a little family business or something like that. In Xero, you might spend a total of maybe an hour or two a month. If you're doing that through spreadsheets, you're probably going to spend a fair bit more time than that. So put some value on your own time and sort of work out how much time you're spending doing spreadsheets. And if you're spending more time doing that than what $50 or $60 is going to cost you, then that's probably the time to change, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And it's something that I definitely, with a lot of my clients, when we're looking at implementing any type of system into the business, and they say, well, why would I want to do that? And you start looking at, well, what does it take you in your time now? Let's convert that to that dollar figure and then compare that against the cost of having the software. 9 times out of 10, it's a no-brainer to implement it into the business from a financial point of view.
Yeah, I think so. And look, I mean, if you think of $600 or $700 a year, that may seem like a lot, especially for a startup. But there's often, like, if it's going to cost you an extra 2 or 3 or 4 hours a month, your time's probably better spent building the business than working on record keeping. Yes. When there's tools out there that are going to speed things up for you. So again, with the cloud bookkeeping platforms, there's a few free ones that are quite good. Wave Accounting, that's sort of gaining a little bit of traction now. It's pretty popular. It's an American-based one.
And even though it's an American-based one, does it still cover all of the tax requirements and those sorts of things that the Australian market needs to have?
Yeah, it deals with GST and everything. It's quite good. The annoying part that I find is like the date ranges are generally set on American years.
Yes.
Like, which is the calendar year. There probably is a setting. I haven't played around with it too much. But we're getting an increasing number of clients that are using that now. And yeah, it's free. It's completely free. The only time you pay for it is if you're using their payment gateway. Then they will take a percentage of the pay that goes through that sort of payment gateway as payment. But if you're not using that function, then it's free.
Cool. And I guess for anyone watching now or in the future, we will put in the comments any links to things that we talk about. So we'll definitely point you in the right direction to find all of these digital tools that Drew is telling us about. So Drew, once we've got our, financial platform in place, what other tools can we, add on or use side by side with those?
All right. So the first ones I'd be looking for is one that's going to help you get your physical records into the digital platform. So that may be things like getting your receipts and things in. So Receipt Bank is a very popular tool where you can take photos of your fuel receipts and so forth and send them into Xero or QuickBooks. HubDoc is another very popular one that's been purchased by Xero, and it's going to be integrated into Xero so everyone can access that. So that can, put together your bank statements and all sorts of things. So you've got supporting information, not just the financial transaction. So say you purchase something, the invoice is attached to that all within the same platform. So if the accountant or bookkeeper has a question regarding that transaction, they can look at the receipt as well, which may provide some more detail and answer their questions for you.
And so that would save you in time in terms of instead of, physically or manually adding a receipt onto a transaction within Xero,
yes.
that automates that process.
Yes, yeah. It's really good, and you know, a lot of it can pick up the supplier and add those sorts of details in there as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and these sort of functions are, you know, improving all the time, so it's getting more and more efficient and more accurate. So it's really good. Helps us out a lot, and as a business owner, once you put your, you know, photos and everything up into these cloud platforms, you can then actually bin those paper invoices and things. So it should streamline your office a little bit once you get into that sort of routine of doing those things.
And so how does implementing something like Receipt Bank help on your end?
Again, it just gives us more access. Like, say we have a question where we're reviewing, it might be something like motor vehicle expenses, and there may be a transaction, because what we see at first is just a list of numbers. You know, you spent 300 here, 400 here, 800 here. Once we click into that, and then if we think, oh, I wonder what that $800 was that a repair, or does that need to be capitalized? We can click in and find a bit more detail in the invoice, where it may sort of list out exactly what that transaction was for, rather than just a dollar amount.
Okay.
So then that stops us having to go ask the client for that information. So all the information is already there, rather than doing a lot of back and forth, chasing things from the client. So It makes it more efficient for both parties, which is great.
Okay. And tools like that, are they pretty easy to implement into your business?
Yeah, very easy. Like if you've got a live sort of Xero file or QuickBooks file or whatever, then they just add on. They're all sort of designed to work with each other. So very
Perfect.
good. Yeah.
Any others?
I guess the next level up would be sort of reporting tools. So sort of dashboarding tools, which may be able to track things like your KPIs or track your actual performance versus your forecast performance, and things like that. There's a few really good ones out there. Future is one that I use, and it just turns your financial reports into nice visuals. So people, you know, again, take on information in different forms. Some people that are more visual may prefer that sort of thing, where things are shown in graphs and pie charts and things like that are very easy to digest quickly. So Spotlight's another one that does a very similar thing. There's a handful of them, and again, they sort of vary in cost, but they can be very useful because they can very easily show trends, rather than trying to look at a bunch of numbers across, you know, your whole screen and sort of trying to look at the trends. So they can be really good.
Not another person, then showing it in that way is going to be a lot more beneficial for you to understand the data.
Yeah, that's right. It's very easy to be overwhelmed by, you know, profit and losses and balance sheets, especially when, you know, if you don't understand them very well. Whereas with these sort of add-ons, you can sort of work out, you know, the main things that you want to see from all that information, and summarize them in nice sort of tables, spreadsheet, you know, graphs and things. So it gives you a nice good snapshot. And if you want to look further into it, then you can certainly drill down further and look into those.
Are there any free versions of reporting tools like that?
Power BI, which is a Microsoft-based one, is quite good. It's got a pack that runs off Xero. It provides a little bit less customizability, but otherwise you can get that like a paid version. It might be $5 a month.
Okay.
And then you've got a lot more things that you can do with that.
Yep. And so we've just had Ben make a comment. I'm just going to throw it up on the screen, and he's saying that the digital tool like Receipt Bank or HubDoc is sensational, because what it means is that when you spend that money, you've got the receipt, you can take a photo straight away, and then, you know, it automatically uploads straight into your financial system, Xero, QuickBooks, MYOB, and you can forget about it. So you don't have to worry about getting to that time of the month where you're reconciling everything and not being able to find that fuel receipt, or the meals and entertainment or whatever it happens to be, it's done right then and there. So thanks, Ben, for commenting and telling us how amazing it is. I think I definitely agree. Being a systems person, anything that we can put into place to make things quicker, easier, simpler is the whole point of this conversation. So
yeah, I think that's great. And I agree with Ben to just do it on the spot while it's fresh in your mind. You can get rid of it. Because with things like fuel receipts, and a lot of the receipts you get from some shops, is even if you keep them, like in a year's time, you can't even read them. The ink's faded. You wouldn't even know.
Yeah, I'm even finding a lot of service providers, products providers are now asking if you want the receipt emailed to you. Instead of having that physical receipt in your hand right then and there, which is great for so many reasons. One, you don't have to worry about losing it or not being able to read it. And it saves on paper and the environment and all of those fun things as well. So
yeah, Xero's got a really good function that they implemented a little while ago where it's like a direct from email. So if you get invoiced and you get emailed an invoice, for instance, you can then send that straight to a special email that every Xero file has, and it will automatically input into there as an expense. You still have to approve it and everything, but it'll go in there as a draft. Yep. Generally, it'll pick up, the supplier, the amount, the GST, the date, and a lot of those important things.
Okay, good to know. I didn't know about that one. If you are a Xero user, how would you find that email address? Is it just in your settings?
Yeah, it starts with bills, but yeah, it is a special email in there. You should be able to find it in the settings. I don't know straight off the top of my head, sorry.
Just Google it, everything.
Just Google everything. Yeah. Email invoices to Xero. It's a really good function. So again, a lot of the invoices I get just come straight to my email for all subscriptions and things like that. Again, I just forward that to the bills email and then pick it up in Xero, and it's really good.
And another little systems hack is that in most email providers, so Gmail, Outlook, you can set up rules where specific emails coming in can be forwarded straight to an email address like that. So you can automate it in that part of it as well. So, it can go straight into an accounts folder and be forwarded at the same time, and you don't even have to touch it.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, there's so many little tricks like that. I don't know all of them. Presentations, and you know a lot about those sorts of things, but yeah, there's lots of cool tools. From an accounting point, just having all your records together is a really good thing. It will help you. And recently I had a new client come across, and they were already in the midst of an ATO audit, and things like credit card records of fuel, fuel purchases and things. The ATO wouldn't accept that because they said, well, how can you know whose car that's been paid for and things like that. So again, they'd lost all their receipts and things. So it just made that process a lot more time consuming and expensive for the client than it needed to be.
Yeah. And I guess that's the other thing that we all have to take into consideration as business owners is we need to prepare for the worst case scenario, and that worst case scenario is the ATO auditing us. And what would that cost us in time and money if that did happen and we didn't have all of our bookkeeping and record keeping up to scratch, in comparison to if we did have it up to scratch, it might be a day's worth of auditing. They've got everything they need and they're done.
Yeah, it certainly streamlines that process. And as accountants, we're sort of the gatekeepers between the business and the ATO. So we try to check those records and make sure that the clients are, pretty safe on in terms of if they do get an audit, the records are there to just hand over to the ATO without too much drama. Just because you get an ATO audit, it doesn't mean you're necessarily doing something wrong. It just may be some other trigger. So your KPIs, like your maybe a little bit different to the benchmarks for some reason or another, and it might be a perfectly fine reason, but it may still spark a review or audit.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So on that note, shall we talk about point number 3, which is all about tax planning?
Yes, so tax planning, I think as a business is something that you should be doing every year. Try to talk to your accountant sort of between April and June of the Australian tax financial year, which is the last quarter. So what that process is sort of looking at what's happened in the 9 months prior, sort of doing an estimation of what you think will happen for the last couple of months of the financial year, and just build a picture of where the business is at. And then from there, you can look at some strategies to minimize your tax or move things around, you know, before the deadlines pass, so you can sort of manipulate your position a little bit to your liking. And if it's done well, it's going to all fly above board. There's nothing really the tax office can do about that. So what that does for us as the accountants is, if we've been through that tax planning process with you, when end of year does come and you're ready to have your account submitted, you already have an idea of what's happened. We have a much better idea because we were involved in that process. So if there's big asset purchases and things like that, we know about those. So that, again, that saves you a little bit of time with sort of explaining things because we've been through that process previously.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's no different to planning anything really. If everybody, all the key stakeholders that are involved in the end product know what's going on at the time that they need to know, then it's going to go much smoother than not.
Yeah, and it sort of depends on what that particular client's motivations may be. So there may be some people that all they want to do is reduce their tax, and we can implement some things that will bring their income down. Mm-hmm. There may be some that are looking for finance, for instance, and there's certain things that we can do to make the figures look better for finance if we need to, if that's what the client's motive is. So that may be things like just holding off on sort of incurring expenses or things like that. So we can do things in a way that's going to benefit the client.
Yep. And do you find it beneficial as an accountant when your clients, you know, are proactive with all of those sorts of things and start those conversations with you and come to you with those questions? Or do you prefer to lead that?
We try and lead it because it's something that we'd like more people to participate in. Sometimes there's less opportunity depending on your structure, depending on your family situation, depending on what else is happening in your group and in your life. But yeah, we do try to encourage people to do it.
Yep.
But yeah, there obviously is some cost. So some people will take it up, some people won't. But these days, the ATO is trying to make it more and more beneficial for people to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
There's some penalties for not getting your things done right, like your trust distribution minutes. If you don't get those right, you know, they're all supposed to be done and signed by 30 June by the trustee. There was a lot of talk about 10 years ago about the ATO saying they're going to start auditing on that point. So everyone's been working to make sure that they get done. Before that, people used to just, you know, it was very common that they weren't done.
Yeah. Okay.
Not probably 30 June anyway. So, yeah.
Perfect. And I guess we're getting down to the last kind of couple of minutes of our 30-minute chat. Is there anything that you want to, you know, make sure that small business owners know about finally, so that they can implement really great systems for their accountants?
Yeah, I would say discuss those things with your accountant or bookkeeper and just work on them. And it doesn't all have to happen at once, but just make an effort to improve things a little bit every year. you know, that there's some clients that we've worked with that have come to us as complete basket cases, and, you know, you can't turn them around in 1 year, you know, that they've sort of got these habits formed, and we just chip away and just give them small suggestions on to it, how to improve it every year, and makes their life a little bit easier. It makes our life a little bit easier as well.
Yeah.
Like, it would be great if we just wave a magic wand and just point them in one direction, and people comply with that. But regardless of how good systems are, people are tricky, I would say. You know, because they're busy, and when you're busy, it's very easy to revert back to old habits.
Yep.
So if you're doing bookkeeping, whether you're doing it yourself or getting someone else to do it, make sure it's done regularly. Make that a sort of a pattern and a habit.
Great.
Yeah, and again, systemize it, like you said. You know, put that as part of your weekly or monthly system, is having your accounts in order, I would say.
Yes, very much so. I know just personally in my own business, we do fortnightly kind of accounting sessions, and it makes such a big difference. You know, you don't have to spend hours and hours pulling your hair out. You just do it a little bit at a time.
Yeah, that's right. The more, like, if you do a little bit at a time, you'll know what happened in that last 2 weeks. If you're trying to, like, look at a transaction from 3 or 4 months ago, and it's like, you know, you may not even remember what that was exactly.
It's very true. All right, thank you, Drew, so much for joining us, and everyone else that joined in to watch live, and anyone who happens to jump on and watch after the fact. We will put all the links to the digital software that Drew talked about and recommended into the comments. So if you want to check any out, they'll definitely be there by the end of today. And Drew and I are both available. If you have any questions, we're always available to answer them and point you in the right direction. So thanks, Drew, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks heaps, Crystal. Thanks for having me on. It's been good.
All right, bye, everyone.